There are truths that get buried with the dead, and there are truths they never meant for you to find. I sat alone in my kitchen that October night, the overhead light off, only the small bulb above the stove casting a yellow glow across the table. In front of me was my husband's Bible, 45 years old, leather cover worn soft as skin, the spine cracked from a lifetime of Sunday mornings. Russell had carried it to every service, every funeral, every baptism in our church on Auburn Avenue, and tucked between the pages of Psalm 51, I found a slip of paper folded in quarters. My hands shook as I opened it. I read what was written there. I read it again. And then I whispered a name I had never heard in my entire life. Beatrice. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just sat there staring at a piece of paper that had turned my 45 years of marriage into a question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Who was Beatrice? What had Russell been hiding from me? And why, 6 months after I buried him at Oakland Cemetery, was I finding this now? My name is Klara Whitfield. I am 65 years old. I have lived in the same house on Edgewood Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia, for 42 years. I raised one son in this house. I nursed my husband through pneumonia twice in this house. And on the morning of March 14th, 2025, I woke up a widow in this house after Russell Whitfield, the love of my life, died of a massive stroke at the kitchen sink while pouring his morning coffee. He was 70. He was healthy. He had just come back from his Saturday walk. He kissed the back of my neck and called me Ladybug like he had since 1979. And then he set down his coffee mug and said, "Klara, my head feels strange." Those were the last words my husband ever spoke to me. The paramedics came. The neighbors came. Pastor Bonner came and held my hand while they zipped Russell into a black bag on the kitchen floor. I remember thinking how small he looked. Russell was 6'2", shoulders like a dock worker, hands that could build a dining room table from a stack of oak boards. And there he was on my linoleum, small as a child. The funeral was the following Saturday at Ebenezer Baptist, the same church where we were married in 1979. Pastor Bonner preached about Ruth. He preached about the kind of love that says, "Where you go, I will go." The choir sang, "Precious Lord, take my hand." And I sat in the front pew between my son Desmond and my oldest friend Loretta Simmons, wearing a black hat with a veil and a strand of pearls Russell had given me for our 40th anniversary. And I did not cry one time. People said I was being strong. People said I was holding up. People said Russell would be proud. The truth is I couldn't cry because I didn't believe it. Part of me was waiting for him to walk back through the door. Part of me still is. Russell and I met in the summer of 1979 at a church picnic on the grounds of Wheat Street Baptist. I was 19 years old, fresh out of nursing school at Grady, wearing a yellow sundress my Aunt Pearl had sewn for my graduation. Russell was 24, working for his uncle's carpentry business, and he had come to the picnic with his mother because she wouldn't let him miss a single church event in the city of Atlanta. He brought me a plate of fried chicken and potato salad, and he said, "Ma'am, I don't know you, but I have to tell you, you look like the answer to a prayer I haven't said yet." I laughed in his face. I told him that was the worst line I had ever heard. He said, "It worked though, didn't it? You're still standing here." We were married 11 months later. Russell was not a flashy man. He was not a rich man. He did not believe in big gestures or loud declarations. But every Saturday morning for 45 years, he walked 4 blocks to Miss Etta's flower stand on Edgewood Avenue and bought me a single yellow rose. He put it in a bud vase on the kitchen windowsill before I woke up. For 45 years. Through pregnancies, through recessions, through the month we almost lost the house in 1994, through every single Saturday until the one where he did not wake up. He called me Ladybug because he said the first time he saw me in that yellow sundress, he thought I looked like a ladybug in a garden. He never called me Klara once in 45 years. Not one time. Even when he was angry. Even when I was wrong. It was always, "Ladybug, come here. Ladybug, you won't believe what happened at the shop. Ladybug, I love you more than yesterday and less than tomorrow." Our wedding rings had Ruth 1:16 engraved on the inside. "Whither thou goest, I will go." That was the man I buried in March. That was the man whose Bible I was holding in October when I found that piece of paper. The first 3 months after Russell died, I did not live so much as I survived. Desmond and his wife Tiana came over every day. Tiana brought casseroles and peach cobbler and that sweet potato pie her grandmother from Valdosta used to make. Desmond, my one and only 38 years old now, a software engineer at a company in Midtown, Desmond sat with me at the kitchen table and made me eat. He would cut the cornbread into small pieces like I was a child. My grandson Jeremiah, 10 years old, came on Saturdays and helped me water Russell's roses in the backyard. Russell grew yellow roses. Only yellow. He had 14 bushes along the back fence. Jeremiah would fill the watering can and walk down the row slowly, the way his grandfather had taught him, and he'd say, "Grandma, Granddaddy said you were the strongest person he ever met." I would smile and say, "Your granddaddy told a lot of stories, baby." Jeremiah would shake his head. "No, ma'am, he said it was true." And I'd go inside and sit on the closed toilet lid and finally let myself cry for 2 minutes, and then I'd wash my face and come back out. Pastor Eldridge Bonner came every Wednesday evening. He was 73, the same pastor who had married Russell and me, who had baptized Desmond, who had buried my mother back in 2010. He would sit in Russell's old armchair and read to me from the Psalms. He didn't try to fix me. He just sat with me. And on Tuesdays, Loretta Simmons picked me up at 10 in the morning and took me to her beauty shop on Sweet Auburn. Loretta had been my best friend since 9th grade at Booker T. Washington High School. 40 years of sitting under that dryer, getting my hair pressed and curled, while Loretta told me everything going on in every black family from East Atlanta to College Park. That was how I lived those first 3 months. Casseroles, roses, psalms, hair appointments. And somewhere in there, without my realizing it, life was starting to happen again. It was late June when Desmond first suggested I sell some of Russell's things. "Mama, the garage is full. The workshop is full. His closet upstairs. You don't have to decide today, but eventually, I'm not selling his tools, Desmond. I'm not asking you to sell the tools, Mama. I'm asking about the clothes, the papers, the boxes." I was standing at this kitchen counter snapping green beans into a colander. Tiana was in the living room folding laundry. Jeremiah was outside, and Desmond was leaning against the refrigerator with his arms folded, looking so much like Russell at 38 that I had to look away. "I'll do it when I'm ready," I said. That's all I'm saying. Then I asked him. And I don't know why I asked, because I hadn't thought about it in years. "Desmond, do you want your daddy's pocket watch? The gold one from his uncle?" Desmond did not answer right away. He looked at the floor, and when he finally spoke, his voice was careful in a way I did not recognize. "Mama, there are some things about Daddy." He stopped, started again. "Never mind. I'll take the watch." "Some things about Daddy what, Desmond?" "Nothing, Mama. I just meant 45 years is a long time. Nobody's perfect, that's all." I stared at him. He was my son. I had carried him for 9 months. I knew every expression on his face, every tell he'd had since he was 3 years old, and my son was lying to me right there in my kitchen. But I let it go. Grief makes you generous. I thought he was just struggling the way I was struggling, and I let it go. That was the first sign. I didn't see it for what it was. A couple of weeks later, Tiana came over one Saturday afternoon while Desmond was at a work conference in Charlotte. She hugged me at the door and said, "Mama Klara, Desmond asked me to come pick up some papers he thinks his daddy had. Tax things from back when Russell helped them with that rental property in 2019. The accountant's asking for it." "Of course, baby. You know where his office is." Tiana went into Russell's office, the small back bedroom Russell had used as his carpentry workspace, with the roll-top desk and the wall of shelves and the ledger books lined up by year. And she was in there a long time. 40 minutes. 45. I was in the kitchen washing dishes, and I started to wonder what could possibly take her that long to find a tax form. When she finally came out, her hands were empty and her face was flushed. "I couldn't find it, Mama Klara. I must have misunderstood Desmond. I'll tell him to look somewhere else." "You sure, baby? You were in there a while." You know how Russell was. Everything organized his own way. I'll call Desmond." She hugged me again and left so quickly she forgot her purse on the kitchen chair. I had to call her cell phone to come back for it. When she pulled back into my driveway, she seemed nervous in a way I couldn't explain, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. I thought she was embarrassed about forgetting the purse. I did not think she had been searching for something. That was the second sign. I did not see that one either. My 65th birthday was the last week of August. The Atlanta heat was still sitting on the city like a wet blanket, but Desmond and Tiana insisted on throwing me a small party at their house in Decatur. Just family and the closest friends. Pastor Bonner came. Loretta came with her husband Calvin. 3 women from my quilting circle at the church came. Jeremiah made me a card out of construction paper with a drawing of me and Russell holding hands in heaven. Tiana baked a coconut cake from my mother's old recipe. Desmond grilled ribs on the back patio. Loretta told a story about me in 10th grade setting fire to the home economics classroom trying to make biscuits, and everyone laughed until Pastor Bonner had to wipe his eyes with a handkerchief. It was the first time since March that I had laughed like that. A real laugh, from the belly. And afterward I sat on Desmond's back porch with a plate of cake on my lap, watching Jeremiah chase fireflies in the yard, and I thought, Russell, I'm going to be okay. I think I'm going to be okay. After everyone else had gone home and it was just me and Desmond in his kitchen, Tiana was upstairs putting Jeremiah to bed, my son reached up to the top of the refrigerator and brought down something wrapped in brown paper. Mama, I have one more thing for you. This is from Daddy. From your daddy? He told me last Thanksgiving that if anything ever happened to him, I should make sure you got this, on a birthday. Not before a year was up, not after. He was specific. He handed me the package. It was heavy. I unwrapped it at his kitchen table. It was Russell's Bible. The big one. The one with the leather cover and the gold edging on the pages. The one he carried to church every single Sunday for 45 years, that had been his father's before him. I knew that Bible like I knew the freckle on my husband's left shoulder. Oh, Desmond, oh, baby, he wanted me to have this. Yes, ma'am, he said so specifically. I held it in my lap and ran my hand over the cover. Then Desmond said something that I did not understand at the time. Mama, Daddy wasn't perfect. You know that, right? I looked up at him. What are you talking about, Desmond? I just mean, when you read it, when you're ready to read it, and you really sit with it, whatever you find, whatever comes up, just know that Daddy loved you. He loved you more than anything. Desmond, what on earth are you trying to say? He shook his head. I'm being sentimental, Mama. It's been a hard day. I just miss him. He hugged me. I put the Bible in my canvas tote bag and I drove home in the dark, and I thought my son was grieving in his own way, and I did not understand what he had been trying to tell me. That was the third sign. That night, when I got home, I put Russell's Bible on the nightstand on his side of the bed. I did not open it. I thought I was not ready to smell his cologne on the pages, to see his handwriting in the margins. I thought I would wait until Christmas, until I was stronger. I turned out the light and went to sleep. And at 11:47 p.m., my cell phone rang. The number was a 478 area code, Macon, Georgia. I didn't know anyone in Macon. I stared at the phone vibrating on the nightstand, right next to Russell's Bible, and something in my chest told me not to answer. I let it go to voicemail. No message was left, but the call rang through for a long time. 8, 9 rings, before it stopped. And then for a minute or two, there was silence, and then the number called again. And again I did not answer. And this time, at the very end of the ring cycle, the person stayed on the line just long enough for me to hear, I swear to God, the sound of somebody breathing. And then they hung up. I put the phone face down on the nightstand. I told myself it was a wrong number, a telemarketer, a scammer, anyone. But I lay awake for a long time in the dark, staring at the ceiling, with Russell's Bible sitting 3 feet away from my head. Macon, Georgia. Russell used to drive down to Macon for work, once a month, 2 days at a time. He had done it for as long as I could remember, 30, 35 years maybe. He always said it was a restoration project on the old Baptist church down there, the one his cousin Theodore had a contract with. He'd leave on a Thursday morning, come back Friday night, kiss my cheek, and tell me how the stained glass was coming along. I thought about that for the first time in my life that night. I mean, really thought about it. 35 years is a long time to restore a church. I rolled over and closed my eyes. That was the 4th sign. The next morning I went to church with Loretta. Pastor Bonner preached about Sarah, how God remembers his promises even when we forget. I held my purse on my lap and I did not hear a word of the sermon. After the service, I drove home and I made myself a pot of coffee, and I sat at the kitchen table, and I looked at the clock, and it was 11:14 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and the house was very quiet. I got up and went to the bedroom and got Russell's Bible off the nightstand. I took it back to the kitchen table. I set it down, and I thought, I'm going to read a psalm, just one psalm. That's what he would want. I let the Bible fall open on its own, the way old Bibles do, to the page it has been opened to the most. It fell open to Psalm 51. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness. According unto the multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. The Psalm of Confession. I ran my finger down the page, reading the verses Russell had underlined in pencil over the years. And halfway down the second page, something thin and folded slipped out from between the pages and fell into my lap. A piece of paper, folded in quarters. The kind of hospital carbon copy they used to print in the 80s. The paper so thin it was almost translucent. The blue ink faded to gray. I picked it up. I unfolded it. It was a receipt from Macon Regional Medical Center, dated April 15, 1987. Pediatric examination, $37.50. And the patient's name was printed at the top in capital letters. Beatrice Whitfield, age 2, Whitfield. My husband's name. The name I had taken 45 years ago when I stood in a white dress at Ebenezer Baptist and said I do. Beatrice. I had never heard that name in my life. I sat at my kitchen table holding that piece of paper, and the house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. And I thought very calmly and very clearly. Russell did not have a cousin named Beatrice. Russell did not have a sister named Beatrice. Russell did not have a single relative in the state of Georgia or the state of Alabama or anywhere else on this earth named Beatrice Whitfield. And in April of 1987, Russell had been in Macon 9 days that month. I remember because that was the month Desmond turned 4 years old, and Russell came home on a Friday night with a red bicycle tied to the roof of the Buick, and Desmond rode it into the rose bushes and cut his knee so bad we had to take him to the emergency room. April 1987. I put the receipt down on the kitchen table. I did not throw it away. I folded it back up very carefully, and I put it back inside the Bible at Psalm 51. Then I stood up and I walked to the sink and I washed my coffee cup. And I thought, no, this is something. He had a cousin, a relative, a friend's child named Whitfield. Something. This is nothing. But I knew, standing at that sink with the hot water running over my hands, I knew in the same way I had known 20 years ago when the doctor first said the word cancer about my mother, in the same way I had known the morning Russell set down his coffee cup and said his head felt strange. I knew something was wrong, and I knew I was not going to stop until I found out what it was. I did not sleep that Sunday night. I lay in the bed that Russell and I had shared for 42 years, and I stared at the ceiling fan turning in slow circles, and I thought about a 2-year-old girl named Beatrice Whitfield at a pediatric clinic in Macon, Georgia, in April of 1987. If that child was 2 years old in April of 1987, she had been born in 1985. 1985 was the year I almost died. I sat up in the bed so fast the room spun. 1985. March. I had just turned 25. Desmond was almost 2. And I had gotten pregnant again, and it had gone wrong from the very beginning. I bled through the whole first trimester. The doctors put me on bed rest. My mother, Ruthie Cleaves, moved into our little rental house on Jackson Street to take care of me and Desmond while Russell worked double shifts at the cabinet shop. And then on a Tuesday night in late August, something went very wrong. I remember waking up in our bed with my nightgown soaked through with blood. I remember my mother screaming for Russell. I remember the ride to Grady Hospital in the back of Russell's truck, with my head in my mother's lap and her hand on my forehead. I remember a doctor's face above me, and a mask and a bright light. And then I remember nothing. For 3 weeks, I remember nothing. When I woke up, it was the middle of September. My mother was sitting in a vinyl chair next to my hospital bed, holding my hand. Russell was asleep with his head on the foot of the bed, still in his work clothes. And my mother looked at me and said, "Klara, baby, you lost the baby. You almost left us, but the Lord brought you back." I cried for a week. And then my mother took me home to the little rental house on Jackson Street, and she put me in my bed, and she fed me oxtail stew and cornbread and collard greens, and she sat on the edge of my bed at night and sang Precious Lord until I fell asleep. My mother took care of me. My mother saved my life. That was what I had believed for 40 years. I sat up in the dark in my bedroom at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Monday in October of 2025, and for the first time in 40 years, I asked myself a question that had never once crossed my mind before. Had I ever actually seen the baby? No, I had not. They told me it had happened while I was unconscious. They told me there was nothing to see. They told me my womb had ruptured and the baby was gone. Had I ever seen a death certificate? No. Had I ever seen the baby's grave? My mother had told me they buried her at Southview. a small plot in the baby section. She said Russell had paid for a little stone, but I had never gone. Every time I brought it up, in those first months when I was still weak and grieving, my mother would say, "Klara, honey, don't torture yourself. You need to look forward. You have Desmond to think about." And then, as the years went on, it just became a place I did not go. I had a baby girl who died in 1985, and I had never seen her grave. I got out of bed. I walked down the hall in my nightgown, and I went into Russell's office, and I turned on the overhead light, and I started looking. Russell's office was the small back bedroom that used to be Desmond's when he was a boy. After Desmond went off to Morehouse, Russell had turned it into a combination workspace and storage room, his roll-top desk in the corner, his bookshelves full of carpentry manuals and church history and old ebony magazines, the wall of ledger books, one for every year from 1981 to 2024, where Russell kept track of every job he'd ever taken and every dollar he'd ever made. I had not been in this room since Russell died. I had let Tiana look for the tax papers. I had left it alone. I started with the desk drawers. Top drawer, pens, rubber bands, a magnifying glass, a tin of Altoids. Normal. Second drawer, files, property tax records, insurance papers, receipts from the hardware store. Third drawer, photographs. Old ones in a manila envelope. Me and Russell in 1980. Desmond as a baby. Russell's mother at the last Thanksgiving before she passed. I set them aside. Bottom drawer, locked. I had never seen Russell lock that drawer in 45 years. I went out to the garage and got a flathead screwdriver from the toolbox he had kept there. Russell's tools, lined up on a pegboard exactly the way he had left them on March 13th. I brought the screwdriver back to the office. I knelt down on the floor in front of that desk in my nightgown, and I worked the tip of the screwdriver into the gap above the lock, and I pried. The lock broke on the third try. Inside the drawer was a small metal box, the kind of box a man keeps cufflinks in. It was heavy. I lifted it out and set it on top of the desk, and I opened it. Inside were 3 things. The first was a stack of canceled checks, held together with a rubber band. I slid the rubber band off and fanned them out on the desk. They were checks made out to a woman named Naomi Carter at an address on Poplar Street in Macon, Georgia. $800 each. 1 check a month. The oldest was dated May 1985. The most recent was dated February 2025, 3 weeks before Russell died. 40 years of checks. 40 years. I sat down in Russell's office chair. I put my hand over my mouth. The second thing in the box was a photograph. A Polaroid. The color faded to peach and brown, the white border yellowed. A young man in a plaid shirt, maybe 30, sitting on a front porch in the Georgia sun, holding a little girl on his lap. The girl was maybe 2 years old. Her hair was in 2 puff pigtails with yellow barrettes. She was smiling at the camera. The young man was my husband, in a shirt I still had in his closet down the hall. On the back of the photograph, in Russell's handwriting, Beatrice, spring 1987, Macon. The third thing was a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in Russell's handwriting. For Klara. Only if she finds this. I did not open it. Not yet. I could not. I put everything back in the box. I closed the lid. I sat in my husband's chair in my nightgown at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I said out loud to the empty room, "Russell, you had another child." I drove to Desmond's house at 7 in the morning. I did not call first. I put on the first dress I could find, and I drove the 12 minutes to Decatur, and I parked in his driveway, and I rang the bell. Tiana answered the door in her bathrobe with a cup of coffee in her hand, and when she saw my face, she said, "Oh, Lord," and she dropped the coffee cup on the hardwood floor of her foyer. It shattered. Brown coffee splashed across the white tile in the hem of her bathrobe, and she did not even look down. "Where is Desmond?" "Mama Klara, where is my son, Tiana?" Desmond came out of the kitchen in a t-shirt and sweatpants, drying his hands on a dish towel. He saw me. He saw the tote bag in my hand. He saw the Polaroid photograph I was holding in my other hand, pinched between my thumb and forefinger. He stopped in the middle of the living room. He closed his eyes. "Mama," he said. "Mama, come sit down." "Don't you tell me to sit down, Desmond Russell Whitfield. Don't you dare. You tell me who this is. You tell me right now who this child is. You knew. You have known. Every time you came to my house, and every time you hugged your daddy's coffin, and every time you told me everything was going to be okay, you knew." He sat down on the couch and he put his face in his hands. He was 38 years old and he cried like a little boy. "I've known since I was 16, he said. His name was Desmond Russell Whitfield, Jr. I had named him after his father and after the man who inspired his father, Desmond Tutu. He had been a serious child, a quiet child, the kind of boy who read the encyclopedia for fun and corrected his teacher's grammar. He had idolized his father. He had followed Russell around the workshop on weekends from the time he could walk, handing him tools, learning the names of wood grains. And apparently, when he was 16 years old, he had found out that his father was paying $800 a month to a woman in Macon, Georgia. He told me the story in his living room while Tiana sat next to him on the couch and Jeremiah watched cartoons upstairs, oblivious. "I found the checks, Mama, in 2003. I was home from school one summer and I was looking in Daddy's desk for a stapler and I found the checks, just like you did. And I asked him. I confronted him right there in his office. I said, 'Daddy, who is Naomi Carter and why are you sending her money?' And he sat down and he closed the door and he told me." "Told you what?" "He told me he had a daughter in Macon. He told me her name was Beatrice. He told me her mother was Naomi Carter. He said," Desmond's voice broke, "he said he had made a terrible mistake when I was a baby. He said it happened once. He said he had loved you every day of his life, before it and after it, but that Beatrice existed, and he was her father, and he was going to be her father, and he was going to take care of her. He begged me. He begged me, Mama. He said you were too fragile to know. He said it would kill you." I stared at my son. "Fragile. Your father called me fragile. Mama, I am 65 years old. I have buried my father. I have buried my mother. I delivered babies at Grady for 31 years. I held women's hands while their husbands died. I held my own husband while he died on my kitchen floor. Do not sit there in your fine house in Decatur and tell me that Russell thought I was too fragile." "Mama, please. Where does she live?" "Who?" "Beatrice. Beatrice Whitfield. My husband's daughter. Where does she live?" Desmond looked at Tiana. Tiana looked at the floor. "414 Poplar Street, Macon, Georgia." I put the Polaroid back in my tote bag. I stood up. "Mama, don't go alone. Mama, please let me come with you. Mama, you have been lying to me for 22 years, Desmond. You do not get to come with me." I walked out of his house. I got back in my car, and I drove the 12 minutes home with my hands shaking so badly on the steering wheel that a man at a red light on Ponce de Leon rolled down his window and asked me if I was all right. I was not all right, but I was not going to cry in front of a stranger in traffic. I called Loretta from the kitchen. She was at the beauty shop. She picked up on the second ring. "Klara? Baby, you all right?" "Loretta, I need you. I need you to close the shop." "What's wrong?" "I need you to come with me to Macon." There was a pause. "Macon, Georgia?" "Yes." "Klara, what is in Macon?" I looked at the Bible on the kitchen table. I looked at the Polaroid in my hand. "My husband's other child." Loretta did not ask a single question. She said, "I'm on my way." She was in my driveway in 20 minutes. She had told her 3 stylists to reschedule the day's appointments. She had not changed out of her work clothes. She got out of her car and walked up my front steps and hugged me on the porch. And for the first time since I had opened that Bible on Sunday morning, I cried. I stood on my own front porch, and I cried into the shoulder of my oldest friend, and Loretta just held me and said, "I've got you, baby. I've got you." When I was done, she pulled back and she looked at me. "Klara, you want to do this today?" "I want to do it today." "All right, I'll drive." The drive from Atlanta to Macon is about an hour and a half on I-75. Loretta drove. I sat in the passenger seat with my tote bag on my lap, and I watched the pine trees go by, and I did not speak for almost 40 minutes. Finally, I said, "Loretta, I want to tell you what I keep thinking." "Tell me." "I keep thinking about the roses." The roses. Every Saturday morning for 45 years, Russell brought me a yellow rose. Every Saturday. Through everything. And I keep thinking, was that guilt? Was he bringing me a flower every week because he had been unfaithful once and he was trying to make it up to me for 40 years? Is that what my marriage was? Was every single thing Russell ever did for me just an apology? Loretta was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "Klara, let me ask you something." "Ask." "Did Russell love you?" "I thought he did." "Baby, I have known you and I have known that man since 1979. I saw that man look at you at your wedding, and I saw him look at you at your mama's funeral, and I saw him look at you last Christmas when he thought nobody was watching him. That man was not apologizing. That man was worshiping. I don't know what happened in 1985. I don't know what we're going to find in Macon. But you cannot tell me Russell Whitfield did not love you, because I saw it with my own 2 eyes for 46 years, and I don't believe it. I did not say anything. I watched the pine trees. Loretta said, "But let me ask you one more thing." "All right. How come you never looked for that baby's grave?" I turned and looked at her. "What?" "The baby, Klara, the one you lost in 85. You never told me you went to the grave. In all these years, you never once mentioned visiting. Not on a birthday, not on an anniversary, nothing. And I know you. You would have gone. If there had been a grave to go to, you would have gone." I stared at her. I had never told Loretta that my mother was the one who had buried the baby while I was unconscious. I had never told anyone. It was the one thing in my life I never talked about. "Loretta," I said slowly, "why are you asking me that?" She kept her eyes on the road. "Because something about this has been bothering me since you called, and I'm going to say it out loud, and you're going to tell me I'm crazy. But I have known your mother too, Klara. Miss Ruthie, rest her soul. And your mother was not a woman who lost things. Your mother was a woman who managed things." The exit for Macon came up. Loretta put on her blinker. "All I'm saying is, when we get to 414 Poplar Street, keep your eyes open." 414 Poplar Street was a small shotgun house painted pale blue with white trim and a wooden porch on a quiet block in a black neighborhood on the east side of Macon. There was a magnolia tree in the front yard, and along the walkway from the sidewalk to the porch, on both sides, there were rose bushes, yellow roses. I counted them as I walked up the path. There were 14, the same number Russell had in our backyard in Atlanta. Loretta was right behind me. I rang the bell. A woman opened the door. She was in her early 40s, tall, thin, with the kind of long neck my mother used to call a swan neck. Her skin was the color of honey in afternoon light. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun. She was wearing hospital scrubs, the pale green kind, the kind I used to wear myself at Grady, and she had a stethoscope hanging around her neck. She looked at me, and her face, her whole face, just collapsed, not in surprise, in something like relief. "You're Klara," she said. I could not speak. She said, "I have been waiting for you to come for 38 years. Please, please come inside." Her name was Beatrice Whitfield Carter. She was a registered nurse at Atrium Health Navicent. She had been born on August 24, 1985, at Macon Regional Medical Center. She lived alone in the house her mother, Naomi Carter, had left her. She had never been married. She had no children. She led us into her living room, and she sat me down on a worn blue velvet couch, and she went to the kitchen to make tea, because she said she did not know what else to do. While she was in the kitchen, I looked at the walls. There were photographs everywhere. Russell holding a newborn in a hospital blanket. Russell sitting on the porch steps with a little girl on his knee, both of them laughing. Russell at what looked like a high school graduation, standing next to a teenage Beatrice in a cap and gown, his arm around her shoulders, his face filled with a pride I had only ever seen directed at Desmond. Russell at her college graduation, Russell at her pinning ceremony when she became a nurse. 30 years of photographs of my husband being a father to another woman's child, and me, in Atlanta, not knowing she existed. Beatrice came back with the tea. She sat across from me in a wingback chair. She set the tray down between us, and she folded her hands in her lap, and she said, "Ma'am, I don't know where to start." I said, "Start with your mother." Beatrice nodded. My mother's name was Naomi Carter. She was born in 1954 in Dublin, Georgia. She never married. She could not have children. She had endometriosis very badly when she was young, and she had a hysterectomy when she was 26. She worked as a secretary at the AME church in Macon, and she lived a quiet life. How did she know my husband? Beatrice looked at me. "Ma'am, she didn't." "I'm sorry?" "My mother met your husband for the first time in 1987 when I was 2 years old, when he came looking for me." The teacup in my hand began to shake. I set it down on the saucer before I spilled it. "Beatrice, I don't understand." She took a deep breath. She looked at Loretta. She looked back at me. Ma'am, my mother adopted me in 1985. She got me through a private adoption arranged by her best friend from childhood, a woman she had known since they were girls together in Dublin, Georgia. She paused. A woman named Ruthie Cleaves. The room went very still. My grandmother, I whispered. Yes, ma'am. My mother. Yes, ma'am. My mother gave you? Ma'am, Beatrice said, and her voice was shaking now too. Your mother did not give me to mine. Your mother sold me to mine. Loretta put her hand on my knee. I could not feel it. Beatrice stood up. She walked to a small writing desk in the corner of the living room, and she opened a drawer, and she took out an envelope. A sealed envelope, with my name written on the front in my husband's handwriting. For Klara, from Russell, only when she is ready. My father left this with me 6 months before he died, Beatrice said. He said if you ever came to find me, I was to give it to you. He said you would need it. He said, her voice caught. He said to tell you that he loved you, and that everything he did for you, and that he was sorry it took him so long. She held out the envelope. I took it with both hands. I sat on a stranger's velvet couch in a small blue house on Poplar Street in Macon, Georgia, and I looked down at my dead husband's handwriting on the front of a sealed envelope, and I knew that whatever was inside was going to change my life a second time. I opened it. I unfolded the letter. I began to read. Ladybug, if you are reading this, it means you found the receipt in my Bible, and you did what I knew you would do. You went looking. You always were the bravest woman I ever knew. My love, I have to tell you something, and I have been trying to figure out how to tell you for 40 years, and I could not do it while I was alive. I was a coward. I hope you will forgive me. Beatrice is not my child from another woman. Beatrice is your daughter. She is the baby you had in August of 1985, the one your mother told you died. She did not die, Ladybug. She was born alive and healthy, and while you were unconscious in that hospital bed for 3 weeks, your mother signed papers giving her to Naomi Carter in Macon. She forged your signature. She forged mine. I did not know until 1987 when I was working a job in Macon and I saw a little girl in the grocery store who had your eyes, and I asked the woman holding her what her name was, and she said Beatrice. And I followed them home. And I confronted Naomi. And Naomi cried on her front porch and told me everything. Your mother told Naomi that you had not wanted the baby, that you were sick and poor and could not handle 2 children, that it was a kindness. Naomi believed her, Klara. Naomi was a good woman. She did not know what she was part of. I could have told you then, in 1987. I came home from that trip and I sat at our kitchen table and I tried for 3 days to find the words. But you were so happy that year. You had just gotten that promotion at Grady. Desmond was 4 and healthy. Your mother was living 3 blocks away and you were the closest you had ever been to her. And I thought, if I tell her now, she will lose her mother and her baby all over again in the same breath. She will never forgive Ruthie. She will hate her for the rest of her life, and it will destroy her. So I made a decision, my love, and I do not know if it was the right decision. I think about it every day. I decided I would go to Macon myself. Every month, I would be that little girl's father. I would pay for her food and her school clothes and her doctor's bills. I would be there for her birthdays. I would watch her grow up, and I would wait. I would wait until Ruthie was gone. And when Ruthie was gone, I would bring Beatrice home to you. I would tell you everything, and I would let you decide whether to forgive me. Ruthie died in 2010. I was going to tell you on our 40th anniversary. I lost my nerve. I was going to tell you on your 65th birthday. I lost my nerve. I kept thinking I had more time. I ran out of time, Ladybug. I am so sorry. Beatrice is a good woman. She is a nurse. She takes care of sick people for a living, the same way you did. She has your hands. She has your laugh. She has your way of tilting her head when she is listening to somebody. She has never had a mother who was really hers, and she has spent her whole life looking for one. Go to her, Ladybug. Please, do not waste any more of the time I wasted. And know this, I did not love you less because of Beatrice. I loved you more. Every single day for 45 years, I loved you more, because every single day I was carrying something heavy for you so that you would not have to carry it yourself. I would do it again. I would do it 1,000 times again. That is what love is, Ladybug. Love is not being perfect. Love is carrying the weight. I will see you on the other side. I will bring you a yellow rose. Your Russell. I sat on that blue velvet couch and I read my husband's letter, and I did not cry. I finished reading it. I folded it up. I put it back in the envelope. I looked up at the woman sitting across from me. My daughter. My 40-year-old daughter who had my hands and my laugh and my way of tilting her head. My daughter who had been stolen from me in a hospital bed while I was unconscious. My daughter who had been raised by a good woman in a small blue house in Macon, Georgia. My daughter who had spent her whole life looking for me, and all I could say was, I have had a daughter for 40 years, and I did not know. I do not remember leaving Beatrice's house that afternoon. I remember Loretta's hand on my elbow. I remember Beatrice standing in her doorway in her nurse's scrubs, her face wet, saying, "Please come back. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." I remember the magnolia tree and the yellow roses and the blue sky over Macon. And I remember nothing else until I was sitting in my own kitchen in Atlanta at 7 o'clock that evening, with Loretta making me a plate of scrambled eggs I did not eat. "Klara, baby, you have to put something in your stomach." "I can't." "Just a bite." "Loretta, I can't." She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. She put her hand over mine, and she said the thing I had been avoiding since the moment I read Russell's letter. "Klara, you have to go see your mama." I looked up. "My mother is dead." "I know." "She's been dead 15 years. "I know, baby, but you have to go see her." I closed my eyes. My mother, Ruthie Cleaves, was buried at Southview Cemetery on Jonesboro Road. It was the oldest black cemetery in Atlanta, where we had buried my father in 1997 and my grandmother in 1982, and now, since 2010, my mother. I had not been to her grave in almost 3 years. I used to go every year on her birthday in May. I used to bring her yellow jonquils. I used to sit on the grass and tell her about Desmond, about Jeremiah, about what the neighbors were doing. I loved my mother. I had loved my mother for 65 years. And now I knew that my mother had looked me in the eye in September of 1985 in a hospital bed at Grady Memorial while I was weeping over a baby I had been told was dead. And she had lied. She had lied to me for 25 more years, until the day she died holding my hand in a hospice bed at Emory. She had let me grieve a baby who was living in a small blue house in Macon. She had watched me light a candle every August 24th for a daughter who was walking around the state of Georgia in her own skin. She had taken my child. I opened my eyes. "Loretta, I'm going tomorrow. You want me to come?" "No, I have to do this by myself." "All right, baby. I'll be at the shop. You call me the minute you're done." I drove to Southview the next morning. It was a Tuesday. The cemetery was almost empty. There was one groundskeeper on a riding mower in the distance, and a single car parked down by the office, and otherwise it was just me and the crows and the oak trees and the rows of headstones stretching out across the hill. My mother's grave was in Section 12. Ruthie Mae Cleaves, 1935 to 2010. Beloved mother and grandmother. She hath done what she could. She hath done what she could. That had been her favorite verse, Mark 14:8. The verse about the woman who anointed Jesus with oil. My mother had it embroidered on a pillow in her living room. She used to say it when she was tired, when she was frustrated, when something did not work out the way she had wanted. Well, honey, I'd done what I could. I sat down on the grass in front of her headstone in my church dress. I put my purse beside me. I took a deep breath. And then I began to talk to my dead mother for the first time in 15 years. "Mama, I had a baby girl in 1985. You remember her. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Her name is Beatrice, and she lives at 414 Poplar Street in Macon, Georgia, and she's a nurse just like I was, and she has my hands." I stopped. I had to breathe. "Mama, I was 25 years old. I had a 2-year-old son at home. I had a husband who worked 60 hours a week. I had $112 in our savings account. And you decided, Mama, that I could not handle 2 children. You signed my name to a piece of paper while I was in a coma, and you gave my baby to your friend Naomi, and you never told me. You let me think she was dead. For 40 years, Mama, you let me think my own child was dead." I was not crying yet. My voice was steady. "I want to ask you why. I want you to tell me why. And I know you can't answer me, but I am going to sit here on this grass until I feel like I understand, because otherwise, I do not know how I am going to live with this for the rest of my life." The wind moved through the oak trees, and I sat there on the grass, and I thought about my mother. I thought about Ruthie Mae Cleaves, born in a shotgun house in Dublin, Georgia, in 1935. A woman who had picked cotton as a child. A woman who had watched her own mother die of pneumonia at 39 because there was no doctor for black women in her county. A woman who had come to Atlanta in 1953 with a cardboard suitcase and $11. A woman who had cleaned white women's kitchens for 15 years while she put herself through night school and then through Clark College, and who had retired as an assistant principal at Booker T. Washington High School. A woman who had survived things I could not imagine surviving. A woman who had watched her only daughter almost bleed to death in 1985. A woman who had sat by my hospital bed for 3 weeks thinking she was going to bury me. And I thought, not to forgive her because I was not ready to forgive her, but I thought, Mama, you were so scared. You were so scared of losing me that you decided the baby was a threat. You looked at that infant and you did not see your granddaughter. You saw the thing that was killing me, and you made a decision. You made a terrible, terrible decision, and you thought you were saving my life. You were wrong, Mama. You were so wrong. But I think I understand. I put my hand on her headstone. The granite was warm from the October sun. Mama, I don't forgive you yet. I don't know if I'm going to, but I am going to go meet my daughter, and I am going to tell her about you. The good parts, Mama, because there were good parts. I am going to tell her that her grandmother was a woman who survived, and one day, maybe, I am going to come back here, and I am going to tell you that I forgave you. But not today. I stood up. I brushed the grass off my dress. You hath done what you could, Mama. You did not do enough, but you did what you could. I walked back to my car. I got a phone call that Friday from a woman named Detective Harriet Pollard at the Macon Police Department. I almost did not pick up. I had spent the week in a fog. I had not eaten more than toast. I had slept maybe 4 hours a night. Desmond had come over every day, and I had let him sit in my kitchen, but I had not spoken more than 10 words to him at a time. But the area code was 478 again. Macon. And this time I picked up. Mrs. Whitfield, my name is Detective Harriet Pollard. I'm with the Bibb County Investigative Division. Do you have a few minutes? Yes. Ma'am, your daughter Beatrice contacted our office earlier this week. She asked us to look into the circumstances of her adoption in 1985. I'm calling because I'd like to come up to Atlanta and meet with you in person, if that's all right. What did you find? Ma'am, I'd rather do this face to face. Detective, I am 65 years old and I have had a week I would not wish on my worst enemy. Please tell me what you found. There was a pause. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Whitfield, we pulled the original adoption file. The signatures on the relinquishment documents, yours and your husband's, are forgeries. A handwriting expert confirmed it this morning. The notary who stamped the documents was a woman named Eunice Booker, who ran a notary service out of her home in Mechanicsville. Ms. Booker died in 2001, but we found her business records, and there is no record of your adoption in them, which means the notary stamp was forged too. I sat down at my kitchen table. Ma'am, the woman who facilitated the adoption was your mother, Ruthie Cleaves. We have corroborating evidence. A letter your mother wrote to Naomi Carter in October 1985, which was in Ms. Carter's effects when she passed. In the letter, your mother refers to the adoption as, quote, our private arrangement. She asks Ms. Carter to never contact her daughter directly. She says, quote, Klara will heal faster if she believes the child is gone. Detective, yes, ma'am. Is there anyone I can prosecute for this? Ma'am, I'm sorry. Your mother is deceased. The notary is deceased. Ms. Carter is deceased. There's no living party to charge. So there is no justice. Mrs. Whitfield, ma'am, with respect, there is your daughter. She's alive. You're alive. That's the only justice there's going to be in this case, and if you ask me, I've been doing this 31 years. That's the best justice there is. I did not answer. Detective Pollard said, Mrs. Whitfield, there's one more thing. In your mother's letter to Ms. Carter, she wrote something else. I can read it to you. Read it. The detective cleared her throat. Naomi, she read, I know what you must think of me. I know what I have done. But you did not see my Klara on that hospital bed. You did not see what losing a second baby would have done to her. I am choosing between 2 sorrows for my child, and I am choosing the smaller one. May God have mercy on me. One day I will tell her. I promise you. One day when she is strong enough, I will find the courage to tell her. And if I die before I find that courage, then you must tell her yourself. Or you must tell that little girl, and the truth will find its way home. The truth always finds its way home. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Detective. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry for what you're going through. Detective, can I ask you one thing? Anything. Did my husband know about the forgery? Did he know that my mother had forged our names? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Ma'am, I can't say for certain, but he paid a private investigator in Macon in 1988 to look into Ms. Carter's legal right to the child. We found the receipts in his files when we subpoenaed Ms. Carter's attorney. I don't know for sure what the investigator told him, but I think, ma'am, I think he knew. I think he knew, and he decided not to pursue it, because if he had pursued it, your mother would have gone to prison. I set the phone down on the kitchen table. Russell had known. Russell had known my mother had committed a felony against me, and he had swallowed it, because the alternative was watching my mother die in a cell in a women's prison in Georgia. And he had swallowed it for 40 years, and he had gone to Macon every month and been a father to my daughter in silence, because telling me would have cost me my mother, and he did not want me to lose another person I loved. That was the weight he had been carrying. Love is carrying the weight, Ladybug. I put my head down on the kitchen table and I wept. For the first time since I had opened that Bible. I wept for my mother. I wept for my husband. I wept for myself at 25, sobbing into a pillow over a baby I had been told was dead. I wept for the 40 years of birthdays I had missed. I wept for Naomi Carter, dead of cancer in 2003, who had loved my daughter as best she could. I wept for Beatrice, who had grown up without a mother who was really hers. And I wept, finally, for the decision I had to make. Because I had a choice now. I could let this destroy me. I could spend the rest of whatever time I had left being furious at 3 dead women and 1 dead man. Or I could drive to Macon. I drove to Macon the following Saturday. Alone this time. I did not bring Loretta. I did not bring Desmond. I brought one thing with me in a shopping bag on the passenger seat. A photo album. The album I had kept of Desmond's childhood. Every birthday, every Christmas. His first bike, his graduation from Morehouse, his wedding to Tiana, the day Jeremiah was born. I brought it because I thought, if I am going to be this woman's mother, I need to give her the thing I should have been giving her all along. I need to give her her family. I parked in front of the blue house at 10 in the morning. I rang the bell. Beatrice opened the door. She was not in scrubs this time. She was in jeans and a soft cream-colored sweater, and her hair was down. She looked at me, and her eyes filled up. You came back. Beatrice, I am going to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. I am your mother. I did not know you existed until 8 days ago. I have missed 40 birthdays. I have missed your first word and your first step and your first day of kindergarten and every single thing that matters in a mother's life. I cannot get those back. Nobody can give them back to me. But I am standing on your porch right now, and I am going to be your mother for every day I have left on this earth, if you will let me. Beatrice put both hands over her mouth. I have brought you a photo album, I said. It is your brother. His name is Desmond. He is 38 years old, and he is a software engineer. And he knew about you for 22 years, and he did not tell me either, but he is a good man, and he wants to meet you. You have a sister-in-law named Tiana who makes a sweet potato pie I think you would like. You have a nephew named Jeremiah who is 10 years old and who has your grandfather's eyes. I held out the album. And you have a mother who is 65 years old, who does not know how to do this, who is going to get it wrong a lot, but who is here. Beatrice took the album. She held it against her chest. And then she reached forward and she pulled me into her arms on her own front porch. And my daughter held me like she had been waiting to hold me for 40 years, because she had. Mama, she said into my shoulder. And that was the first time in my life anyone had called me that in that voice. We spent that whole Saturday together. She made me lunch. Chicken salad sandwiches on white bread with pickles and chips, because that was what Naomi used to make her when she was little, and she wanted to share it with me. We sat at Naomi's kitchen table and she told me about her life, her childhood in Macon. Naomi, who had died of ovarian cancer when Beatrice was 18. Russell, who had flown down from Atlanta when Naomi was dying and who had sat at the foot of her hospital bed and held her hand while she passed. Beatrice going to nursing school at Mercer on a scholarship. Beatrice choosing oncology because of her adopted mother. Beatrice, who had never married because she said she had never felt whole enough to be a wife. She showed me pictures I had never seen. Her at age 6, losing her first tooth. Her at age 12, at a church picnic in a purple dress. Her in college. Her at Naomi's funeral, standing next to Russell, and Russell's face was the face of a man who was burying part of his own life. And then she showed me a small wooden box, hand-carved, cherry wood. "Daddy made this for me when I was 10, she said. "He said it was for keeping the things I loved the most." She opened it. Inside were letters, 40 years of letters, from Russell. A letter for every birthday, a letter for every Christmas, a letter on the first day of kindergarten, a letter on the day she got her driver's license, a letter on the day she graduated nursing school, a letter on the day Naomi died. "Your mother was a good woman, Beatrice. She did the best she knew how, and she loved you more than her own life. Honor her memory." And the last letter, dated January 2025, 2 months before Russell died. "Beatrice, I am going to tell her soon. I have written her a letter. I have hidden it in my Bible, where she will find it when she is ready. I have written you a letter, too. Your sister in heart, Loretta. Klara's friend, I have told you about her. She knows your mother better than anyone, and I believe she will help her get there. I love you, baby girl. I love your mother. I do not know how this will end, but I know it has to end with the truth. I will see you in February." He had been planning to tell me. He had known he was running out of time. I sat at Beatrice's kitchen table and I read my husband's 40 years of letters to my daughter, and I understood something I had not understood before. Russell had not been hiding from me. Russell had been waiting for me. We drove back to Atlanta together that Sunday. Beatrice followed me in her own car because she said she wanted to meet Desmond, and she wanted to meet Jeremiah, and she wanted to see the house her father had lived in for 42 years. Desmond was waiting on my porch when we pulled into the driveway. He had Jeremiah with him. Tiana was standing behind them in the doorway. When Beatrice got out of her car, Desmond walked down the steps slowly, and he stopped in front of her, and he looked at his sister for the first time in his life. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she said. And then Desmond, my quiet, bookish son who had not cried in front of me since he was 12 years old. Desmond hugged his sister in my driveway, and he sobbed like a child, and he said, "I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I should have told her. I should have told her years ago. I am so sorry." And Beatrice, who was the older of the two of them by almost 2 years, held her little brother and said, "Desmond, it's all right. It's all right. We're here now." Jeremiah, who was 10 years old and who had been quietly watching all of this from the porch, walked down to the driveway. He looked up at Beatrice. He said, "Are you really my aunt?" Beatrice bent down. "Yes, baby, I am." Jeremiah nodded very seriously. "My granddaddy told me about you," he said. We all stopped. "What?" I said. Jeremiah looked at me. "Grandma, Granddaddy told me about Aunt Beatrice last Christmas. He took me out to the rose bushes and he said there was a lady in Macon named Beatrice who was family, and one day I was going to meet her, and when I met her I was supposed to tell her her daddy loved her." I looked at my grandson. "Jeremiah, how come you never told me that, baby?" He shrugged. "Granddaddy said not to. He said it was a secret I had to keep for him until the right time." He looked at Beatrice. He looked at me. "This is the right time, right, Grandma? Is this what he meant?" I knelt down on the concrete of my driveway, and I held my grandson's face in my hands. "Yes, baby, this is what he meant. It has been 6 months now. It is April. The yellow roses in my backyard are blooming. Beatrice drives up from Macon every other weekend. She stays in Desmond's old bedroom. She has met Pastor Bonner, who cried and called her child of the church. She has met Loretta, who held her at arm's length and examined her face and then pulled her into a hug and said, "Baby, you look just like your mama at 25. She has met the women in my quilting circle. She has come to Ebenezer Baptist with me on Sunday mornings and sat in the pew where I have sat for 46 years. And she has sung the hymns in a soft alto voice that sounds like my mother's. Desmond and Beatrice have slowly become brother and sister. They text. They call each other on Sundays. Beatrice came to Jeremiah's basketball game last month and sat on the bleachers between Desmond and Tiana and cheered for her nephew. She has told me she is thinking about moving to Atlanta. There is a position at Grady that would be a promotion. She is still thinking about it. I am trying not to push. I go to see my mother's grave on the first Saturday of every month now. I have started bringing her yellow jonquils again. I sit on the grass and I tell her about Beatrice, about her granddaughter. I do not pretend to have forgiven her. I do not know if I ever fully will. But I have stopped being angry every minute. Some days now, I sit at her grave and I just tell her I miss her, because I do. My mother was the first person who ever loved me, and she was wrong about the biggest thing she ever did, and both of those things are true at the same time. That is what being alive is. That is what I am learning at 65. I keep Russell's Bible on my nightstand. I read Psalm 51 every Sunday morning. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. I have started a new album, just a small one. It is for Beatrice. I am filling it with photographs of everything she missed. Old pictures of me, pictures of her grandmother, pictures of the house she should have grown up in, pictures of the room she would have had. At the back of the album, I have pasted in the Polaroid of Russell holding her at age 2, and underneath it in my own handwriting I have written, "Your father loved you. For every single day of your life, he loved you. And now I do too." Last Saturday morning, I walked to Miss Etta's flower stand on Edgewood Avenue. It's the first time I've walked there since Russell died. Miss Etta is 91 years old now and mostly blind, but she recognized my voice. "Miss Klara, baby, how you been?" "I've been all right, Miss Etta." "Who you buying flowers for today, honey?" I picked out 2 yellow roses. I paid for them. I walked home with them in my hand. One rose I put in this bud vase on my kitchen windowsill, where Russell had put one for me every single Saturday for 45 years. The other one I pressed between the pages of Russell's Bible at Psalm 51, where my husband had hidden the beginning of the truth. There are truths that get buried with the dead, and there are truths that if you are lucky, if you are very lucky and very brave, come home to you anyway. My name is Klara Whitfield. I am 65 years old. I am a widow and a mother of 2 and a grandmother of 1, and I am not the same woman I was last October. I had a daughter for 40 years and I did not know. Now I do, and I will spend every day I have left loving her.